I love him, I love him, I love him. And where he goes, I follow, I follow, I follow. He'll always be my true love, true love, true love from now to forever, ever, ever. Oh, there is an ocean too deep. No mountain so high that can keep me away from his love. And scene. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Save Black Girl Reads, where I am your host, Ariel, the best friend in your head that you never knew that you needed, but you are so glad that you have. Welcome back, friends, to another installment. I have lost track of the weeks that we are on. I want to say that we are on week 6 of Becoming. And so I think that's what I'm going to stick with because we had 8 weeks. We're already through half of it. And so it's either week 6 or somewhere in there. I don't know, but we're just gonna continue on. So stay focused, sis. And bro, let's figure this out. We'll figure it out in another video. Maybe I'll come back and correct it. Maybe I'll correct it in the description below. Let's just stay tuned and figure it out, and we'll figure it out together and have it done. Okay. So to start this off, we're talking about chapter 13 because in a lot of the things we have come into the space that Flotus is now married. Flotus is now in this space of trying to figure things out with her husband, and or our former Flotus. She has done the things, and now she has transitioned into yet another job. Now she has taken a job as with a role as a executive director for this company called Public Allies that has now started a Chicago chapter. And essentially what her role is in this particular job is that, or in this position, is that she is supposed to bridge the gap between those going into the public sector from the leadership standpoint of the community. So she is looking for leaders within the community on the south side of Chicago, and not just the south side, but, essentially leaders who may not be considered because they don't have a typical 4-year degree from a university or college. She is looking for those individuals, and basically through public affairs, what they do is they do professional development and things like that. Pretty much put them in a great position for other careers and positions in a public sector or in a nonprofit space, to kind of like get them prepared and things of that nature. So she has that role, and she is absolutely loving it because she feels like it gives her a bit more purpose than what she was doing at Sidley and Austin. Now, your former president, he is actually handling a few positions. He's a lawyer, he's a professor at a college, he's an organizer. He's a soon to be published writer, because when we left him in chapter 12, he was coming back from Bali writing the book, right? So, and the book is now almost finished, and he's published it. It's called Dreams of My Father, which we know that to be like, New York Times bestseller or what have you, but it wasn't at first. So, but more on that. So he does that. He's also in a space of, even though he has like 9,000 positions right now, he's also thinking about going into state legislature. And so he's considering that. And and he actually goes in for the 1996 election cycle to be a state legislator. However, our forever first lady is not necessarily bored with it because, again, of her history with what she's seen in politics, but it's more so about the fact that she sees her husband as this upright man who's trying to do the things, and he really is a great individual, but she from what she's experienced and what she's known of politics, from working in the office of the mayor, from seeing the things from Santita, from that perspective, she's not necessarily sure and not altogether confident. But, of course, she doesn't want to hold him back from his dreams. So she's like, go ahead, let us try it. So in the space of announcing his candidacy, he he's ready to start doing the campaigns. However, everybody take a deep breath. In the space of doing all of that, we find out that his mother, Ann Dunham, is diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and his sister and Toot are taking care of her as best as they can. But ultimately, she lost her fight with cancer shortly after he announced his candidacy for wanting to go in for legislature. So obviously, in this 1996 cycle, the fall of 1996 is like a big year, big transition, or what have you. He loses his mom. He also wins the election, which means that he's now going to have to spend a lot of time in Springfield, which is not in Chicago. So here we go again, the long distance. It seems like there's been a pattern here with the two of them since they started when he was a summer associate heading back to Cambridge. They have really gotten this long distance thing down pat, because now here it is. Half of the week he spends in Springfield. The other half of the week he's back in Chicago. So they kind of do this dance for a while. And what makes it sweet is that on Fridays, he returns home. They meet at this restaurant called Zinfandel, which is how they pretty much commemorate their weekend, having the conversations about their week and the things that they have done. And so, it's like date night every Friday. It keeps them, kind of moving in the same direction, even though a lot is happening with them all together. Towards the end of the chapter, what we find is that she has transitioned into a new position as an associate dean of community relations for the University of Chicago. And guess who hired her? Art Sussman, the same man that she sat down and had that conversation with about why she didn't feel like she was welcomed at the University of Chicago, and she went all the way to a Princeton to get a degree. He hired her to better improve the relations between the community outside of the University of Chicago and the University of Chicago. So she has this job. She absolutely loves it, because now, again, it's the advocacy for individuals in her community to actually see what type of opportunities they may have by attending the University of Chicago, giving them an opportunity of a relationship that she didn't necessarily have when she was looking at colleges and universities to attend. The same way that they have this type of, full force, full steam ahead in their careers, they don't got that in the baby making department. So, plot twist, they are having issues getting pregnant. They both want a family. They're both on the same page of wanting that family and starting that family. However, it is not coming to fruition as quickly as they think, or as quickly as it is thought that they should. And so one thing that we see, or one thing that she reveals to us, is like the process of having a miscarriage, and how it is pretty the suffering. Essentially, she didn't use that word, I'm using that word, but essentially it's like a suffering that she goes through that she doesn't really that she kind of describes on page 188. And she says a miscarriage is lonely, painful, and demoralizing, almost on a cellular level. What nobody tells you is that miscarriages happen all the time to more women than you'd ever guess. Given the relative silence around it, I learned that only after I mentioned that I'd miscarried to a couple of friends, who responded by heaping me with love and support, and also their own miscarriage stories. So she talks about how it is lonely and painful. It is essentially a club that no woman really wants to be a part of, but you realize that more women are a part of it than actually let on. They just don't say anything. And so it's almost like you're suffering in silence until you actually say, hey, this is what I'm suffering with. And then others are like, oh, yeah, that happened. And she said that it wasn't until she made that declaration till it wasn't until she made that declaration till one of her friends actually told her about, going to a fertility doctor, and actually going through that process. And they then settled on doing in vitro. And that is how she conceived. And so he talks about, like, the excruciating processes of having to stick herself with needles to in the process of what it does to kind of like generate population of like the good eggs that you have in your ovaries and stuff like that. I'm not going to go into the details because, again, what we do over here, high level overview of the chapters. If you want all the details, this is why I'm here, to encourage you to go and read the chapters. You should already read them before you tune in, but anyway, sis, you can still go back and get a little bit more of the details. But she actually does highlight that information. And then she talks about in the process of having to give her body over in these types of ways and stick herself in these uncomfortable ways while her husband, again, is in Springfield serving laws and writing up legislature. She is brewing in this space of feeling as though she's having to sacrifice more than what he is, and how she feels that it is unfair that what she is sacrificing is more than what he is. But she says that she actually kind of has a change of heart once she becomes pregnant with Malia. And then she's like, you know what, I take it back because I'm the one who gets to spend all of this time incubating this baby. She pretty much gives the explanation of how her pregnancy is beautiful because she has been having troubles. She really sees it as a beautiful process and she gets to kind of keep this baby all to herself until, the baby's born in July of, 1998. And that's when Malia was born. She does talk about, like, the fact that it was July 4th and people hadn't queued up the barbecues yet. And I loved how she gave the description of that. Again, if you really want the details on that, go read the book. Okay. All right. Now, moving on to chapter 14. Here we are. The Obamas are brand new parents of this brand new baby. And they are, I feel like I have to actually highlight this for you guys. She is 34 with this brand new baby, and he is 37. I say all of that to say that the pressure sometimes, because I feel like, especially if you are a woman in society, a lot of times you will get the pressures of having a career, but you also have people within your circle, those who may have already had children, or they're in the expectation of you having children, pressuring you to have the children, and wondering why you haven't done so. I would just say, take a cue from your former forever first lady. She waited, and I won't say that she waited, but she didn't conceive and have a kid, her first kid, until age 34. I say all of that to say there is time. She has raised her children. They are now adults. The youngest is 21. So at this point, like, take a chill pill, sis. Take a chill pill, bro. There is not a lot of pressure to be out here. Do not allow society to pressure you into having children just because they want to see you have a baby. Because, again, statistically speaking, the numbers for what a child costs in 2022, $300,000. You got $300,000? You got baby having money? Who got baby having money? Because that is $300,000. That's a house, depending on where you are in the state. If you in California, that is not even a house. That is maybe a condo. Maybe a condo in Seattle on the West Coast. Housing prices are just way more expensive over there anyway. But $300,000, let's look at the opportunity cost here, guys. That's a whole house. This kid is a never ending, just like you don't get, who Who, again, whoever is out here trying to pressure you into having the children and saying that you need to have one, you need to look at them and be like, you got $300,000, you got baby having money. Who's putting the money in the kids' college fund? Who's starting the 529? Who's doing it? And if they ain't got no answer for it, then you tell them, get out your uterus. Get out your uterus and get out your scrotum, because ain't nobody got time. Ugh. But again, I said all of that to say, your former president and former first lady, they were 37 and they were 34 when Malia Obama was born. So you have plenty of time. No pressure. But in this space of them being new parents, she's trying to figure out how to balance this space of marrying her mother, who was a housewife, and being available for her children, and also being Mary Tyler Moore, the career-driven woman who has her own pathway and her own purpose, and Bump being at the beck and call of a man. She's trying to figure out this, where do I fit in the balance of these women? Meanwhile, her husband is now in the space of thinking about, he's doing the state legislature. He's not home for half the week. And now he's thinking about, hey, I can run for U.S. Congress. Oh, so just legislating and passing the bills and putting them up to maybe be thought about and voted on is just not enough. U.S. Congress. So things happen, right? So he is running. They are campaigning. He doesn't win because Malia got a fever, child, and get there in time for a vote that he was supposed to vote on, and it just kind of tanked everything that he wanted to do. It's in the book. You can go and read it, but we're not addressing it because we're going to jump to Sasha Obama being born in June of 2001. So now they are parents of 2 girls. I love the fact that, and I have to point this out, I love the fact that they honored their mothers with Sasha and Malia's middle names, because the kids' middle names are their mom's first names. And I thought that was just really, really sweet how they honored their mothers by way of their daughters. We leave the space of her still trying to figure out what she's going to do in terms of balancing Marion and Mary. And in this space, she's now having this conversation while she has had baby number 2, of thinking about, maybe I should stay home, lean a little bit more into the Marion side, be the homemaker, be the one that's available for the children, things of that nature. And even in this space, when she first had Malia and she was able to have her career, there were housekeepers, there were nannies in the midst of it, so that she could have her free time to actually spend with her child, as opposed to doing the Pine Sol ministry. Okay. Not shaming anybody or shading anybody, but she had the capabilities and the abilities to have the nanny in place. So she used it. Just want to put that out there, because I think I don't want to, kind of give this false narrative of a superwoman when it is not the case. But essentially, she is debating whether or not to stay home. And she is leaning towards it when this opportunity of a position at the University of Chicago Medical Center actually comes to her about a position of community outreach. And she is thinking about taking the position. But one thing that she has noticed from, her position as the associate dean, where she is now she's working part-time, but still doing full-time responsibilities. She is realizing that if she goes into this role, she definitely is thinking about advocating for herself, and advocating in a way of, hey, I'm a mom, I'm a rock star, I can do this job. I'm the girl for the job. But also, though, I am a mother. So when my children need me, I need you to understand that they come first. Don't at me. Don't call God. Don't call me. Type of situation and energy. Like, she's going into this interview and into this role with more of a cognizance around, hey, I'm a mother and I'm also a businesswoman. I need you to honor both spaces. right? So she goes into this particular role, and I think the biggest thing that was that I absolutely enjoyed was on, I want to say, on page 201, where she starts really thinking about what the role will be like. She said that I could nail this job. I thought if I wasn't overburdened with superfluous meetings and I could be given the leeway to manage my own time, working from home when I needed to, dashing out of the office for daycare pickup or for a pediatrician's visit when necessary. So here's the thing. She goes into this particular role advocating for herself in that particular way of, I need space to work from home. I need space to be able to make doctor's appointments for my kids. I need space to be able to go pick them up from daycare. I don't need people questioning me and micromanaging me about why I'm doing what I'm doing. I just need you to understand that the job is getting done. I am doing the job effectively. No, I'm not abusing company time or paid time off or whatever, but I am a mom of little kids. And I feel like she drove it home as well by way of her interview, because she showed up to her interview with Sasha in hand. And I thought, oh, that is so freeing, because I feel like there are a lot of places and spaces where some people would feel, especially guys, remember, this is the 90s. I don't know if you recall watching Dennis the Menace, the 1990s version. Essentially, what happened with Dennis the Menace's mom in the 90s is that she was trying to figure out how to be a professional mother and be a mother of a small child. There was another woman there who was, on the career path, didn't have any kids, and felt the need to bully her in sense of, just like, I'm not doing these things, just not even willing to help, not even wanting to see the fact that she is mom and she's still able to do her job. But she was more so one who was just like, oh no, I won't. We are not in this together. You should just go home and be a mom. Either choose ye this day. And it wasn't in the whom you gonna serve. It's whether you're gonna be a mom or you're gonna be a career person. And I love the fact that former First Lady Michelle Obama actually came in with a little Sasha, that bundle of joy in hand, demanding and saying that these are the things that I need. I need to be able to work from home, and I need to be, when I can, I need to be able to, because again, I can do this. I can nail this. I can knock it out of the park. I'm your girl. It's just that I'm also mom of two little ones. And at any given time, either one of the hats could be called on. And I just need y'all to know that if that hat is called on for the little one, I need to be able to put it on immediately without having to debate with you all about whether or not I should put it on. And I feel like if more corporate environments really fostered that type of freedom for mothers, I think companies would do a whole lot better, as opposed to forcing them to choose between a life with a husband or children versus the corporate life. That's my soapbox. Okay, stay focused. All right. So on page 202, they are now in this space of having new family math, as she calls it. And she said, here's how it went. We had 2 kids, 3 jobs, 2 cars, 1 condo, and what I felt like was no free time, and a partridge in a pear tree. Let me tell you, they had a lot going on. And what she did, what your first lady actually pointed out, was that the free time, or the lack of it, was starting to become a problem with how busy everybody was, to the point where she started seeing it as the way that they used to do things, him being gone for half the week and coming back half the week, and operating in terms of having the date nights. The date nights are now canceled. They can't take these 2 little ones to the Zippendale and recap. So now dinner is at home. And she feels, like she feels as if she could be getting lost in the sauce of his greatness, and she feels as if he's not prioritizing his family in the way that she feels that he should. So she goes to couples counseling. She's thinking that she's going to have an advocate with the counselor. She soon finds out that she's wrong about it, but that the counselor does actually help the both of them cipher through some of the things that actually, kind of contribute to how they show up in their relationship, and also ways they would possibly want to adjust. And what she learned in couples counseling is that she's in charge of her own happiness in her relationship. It is not her husband's job to find her happiness and to make her happy. I'm gonna say that again for the saints and the ain'ts in the back. If you are married, if you are aspiring to be married, if you just don't want no parts of it or what have you, this is a message for everybody. Come on, lean in, sis and bro, because we gotta clarify this for the folks, saints and ain'ts all together. Your partner is not responsible for your happiness in the relationship. Can they do things that bring about happiness? Absolutely, they can. Are they fully responsible? Are they responsible for your happiness? No, you are. Take that word. Go on. Take that word. I don't know where you tithing this week, but go on and tithe on it. Because listen, I don't know if anybody ever told you that before, but I'm here to tell you that as your best friend in your head, I'm here to tell you this right now. If you thought that somebody else was responsible for your happiness, you thought wrong. I don't know what world of delusion that you are living in, sister bro, but that is not the case. Find out what makes you happy and move in the direction of that happiness. Because it is not your partner's responsibility, nor is it in their job description that they are to make you happy. Am I saying you should be in a relationship that makes you miserable? No. But am I saying that you would show up better in your relationship if you are the one in charge of your happiness and you are not trying to force somebody else who is in a relationship with you to make you happy? Yes. Whew, child. Okay. And so in this realization, in this recognition that she is the one in charge of her happiness, she starts doing things that has essentially fell off. So now she's going to the gym regularly, where at one point she was bitter and angry with her husband for finding time to go to the gym when they got these little kids. And she's now in a space where she's not setting the schedule around him and the things that he has to do. She's keeping a tight ship. They got to eat at a certain time. They're getting bath at a certain time. They're going to bed at a certain time. And it is his responsibility to now plan his schedule around his children and knowing that they have a steady bedtime. All right. So that was the gist of chapter 14. I hope that you pulled a lot of good information out of it. I know I did a lot of it. There was a lot of transition that was going on in chapter 14 as well. I think she highlighted that a lot was going on in terms of the friends that she had, friends and family members who were actually going through hard times in their marriages around the same time. And so some of them, that's how she was able to get the information about couples counseling. And I just love the fact that she actually put it in the book to let us know that, the couple or the relationship goals that we see between her and former President Barack Obama is something that they work on. Just saying, it is something that they work on actively and that they did go to counseling for, to actually put the tools in place to do the things that they felt were necessary to continue to protect their relationship and understand that it was moving in a transition and they had to kind of transition with it. Like the things that they were doing before, going date night at Ziffendale's on a Friday night is not working. And so, adjusting the things is necessary, especially now that they got these two little people. Okay. Chapter 15. Here we go. And this is the final one. Chapter 15 provides a whirlwind for the Obamas. The kids are busy with playdates and birthday parties. First Lady Obama is busy with building bridges from the hospital to the community. She talks about how those who are in the hospital look funny at those in the community. They hold their purses, they clutch their pearls, all of that good jazz. And she's in this position of having to actually, bring about a differing perspective and a better relationship. So she has workers going to volunteer in the neighborhood, and she has those who are in the neighborhood coming to volunteer and things like that. It in the hospital to kind of bridge the gap so that people can actually see each other as people and not necessarily as just a bunch of delinquents or whatever notions that you have in your head about someone that you don't necessarily know because you haven't taken the time to actually have the conversations with them. I thought that was very, very well done, and she actually details it on page 209. I'm not going into it again. High level overview here, guys. High level overview. But she also talks about how former President Barack Obama is busy plotting for his position in the U.S. Senate. A seat is becoming available. He wants to go for that seat. And everyone's not necessarily sold on it, particularly your first lady. And she is taking him to Valerie's house or condo so that they can have this hash out of the things and talk realistically about his campaigning for this seat. So when they went into it, Valerie and your former first lady were on the same page about why he shouldn't and how they weren't necessarily sold. By the time everything was said and done and they had that hash out, honey, Valerie was on the other side talking about, I'll be in charge of your money. Come on, let's do this and let's go take this seat. Like Valerie in a whole meeting swapped her. She changed the tune of her song immediately. She looked, and so I think that your former first lady, even though she wasn't gung-ho about it, she wasn't fully on board. She said that she didn't want to stand in the way of his dreams and the things that she wanted to do. And I think that is admirable, especially as a spouse, to understand the dreams that your partner has and knowing that this is something that they want to do and you don't want to stand in the way of it. And so she offered that support reluctantly, but she still offered it. Knowing that she didn't want to look back or have him look back and be bitter about the shoulda, wouldas, and what if I had of. And I just absolutely love that between the two of them. But she did make it a caveat. She put a caveat in there. She was like, listen, if you can run, but I just need you to understand. If you don't get this seat, I need you to find another position that is not in politics, that is a little bit more stable and settled, and it's in Chicago. Like, I need you to be a full-time family man out here in these streets. I'm tired of being a single parent Monday through Thursday, essentially. Even though she's not, she is definitely operating in a space of needing a community. And she talks about having a community of moms, those who are, they are also on a career-driven path. Some are staying home, some are working part-time, but they all kind of just like throw their kids in rooms together and try to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. And she said, but for that group, she don't know if she would have really made it in these first few years, especially with her husband going back and forth from Springfield to Chicago and Chicago to Springfield. Okay, so here's what happened, because we know the history of this. She told him, if you don't win this U.S. Senate seat, you need to pack it up, come on home. He says, okay, but then she was like, it's a serendipitous string of events that take place, and he's the forerunner. And before you know it, he's given a speech at the DNC, the Democratic National Convention. And on page 215, she talks about how he spoke for 17 minutes that night. And I'll go on and read this excerpt. She says, explaining who he was and where he came from. His grandfather, a GI who joined Patton's army. His grandmother, who'd worked on an assembly line during the war. His father, who'd grown up herding goats in Kenya. His parents, and probably loved their faith and what a good education could do for a son who wasn't born rich or well-connected. Listen, and she goes on further in that excerpt to talk about like how he basically, was able to tie in his growing uppings and how he came up to every American, like, someone who was a GI, someone who knew a family member working on the assembly line, someone who, your daddy was your parents worked hard. They maybe had an impossible, like he really just spoke to some of everyone. And on page 216, she talks about how, looking back, I think it was then that I quietly began to let go of the idea that there was any reversing his course, that he'd ever belonged solely to me and the girls. She, again, hindsight being 2020, she knew, I think it was a lot going on where she continued to fight the good fight of, I need you here with me and our daughters. And he is like, but I'm needed in the mental space of politics because I can really effectuate change, not just for our house, but for others' houses as well. So needless to say, he sweeps the seat, taking 70% of the votes for the U.S. Senate. So now he's a U.S. Senator, right? And this speech has really just kind of catapulted him in the ways that, fame usually does. People are out here thinking like, oh, who's this new person? It's like, no, they've been here all along. I just haven't been paying attention type of situation. So he's now in this space of people now know him. They are being recognized, whether they go out to eat, whether they are walking down the street, in the mall. Like, his fame is building. Hers is still pretty quiet, and she's okay with that. But him becoming a U.S. Senator also has people questioning, because of how he was just so charismatic. They were now in the space of questioning whether he should run for president, especially after Hurricane Katrina had taken place. And so your former first lady is really going through things in her mind, because she's trying to balance being the wife of a U.S. senator, but also being her own person, being someone who has a purpose. She is also, let us be clear, she's the communications and community relations director at the University of Chicago Medical Center. And she is doing this well. She has been promoted a few times, and the job is being done to connect people in the community. She has now started this whole thing of she has like outreach for the community members who come into the emergency rooms and only have this temporary type of care, and she's realizing that Black people who are coming into the emergency room, they don't have insurance, they don't have the necessary primary care physicians to really care for them, and she's creating and building bridges in those spaces where she has advocates go into their rooms for aftercare to let them know of their resources so that they can get the insurance that they need, so that they can get the primary care physician that they need, so that these moments of I'm just not going to go to the doctor. She talked about how this work was very personal for her, especially with how her dad was about going to the doctor, going to hospitals and things of that nature. So she talks about how she's not trying to really get caught up in the whirlwind that is her husband, who is now the U.S. Senator that everybody's talking about. And she's still wanting to be grounded in her own fulfillment and in the family steadiness that she has created for the girls. So there was this position, or there was this club that she was invited to, and she gets a phone call, and it is another wife, another U.S. Senator's wife, who is trying to invite her to a club of U.S. senators' wives, and she politely declines because she's like, no, I'm my own woman, and we're not moving to Washington, D.C. He is commuting. And that woman, essentially, she says that particular wife pretty much kind of gave an air of judgment, as if she just shot a bullet through the whole of her marriage because she wasn't moving to Washington, D.C. with her husband. And it's moments like this where I really just be needing people to join the Mind Your Business Ministries, because we really need to build up the membership of Mind Your Business Ministries. We need connect groups. We need evangelists. We need the saints to really put the work in for Mind Your Business Ministries. Because I don't know what that woman felt she was doing, but it was incorrect and inaccurate, as we see after their matriculation through presidency and all of that. They still married. But she talks about on page 219, not trying to get caught up in the whirlwind that is now her husband, the U.S. Senator. And she says that, you know, I've been Mrs. Obama for the last 12 years. Been married 12 years, and he's thinking about going into the presidency. Y'all, like, you know, beat that. At least in some spheres, I was now Mrs. Obama in a way that could feel diminishing. A Mrs. defined by her Mr. I was the wife of Barack Obama, the political rock star, the only Black person in the Senate, the man who'd spoken of hope and tolerance so poignantly and forcefully that he now had a hornet buzz of expectation following him. And so here she is. She's in this space and she's like, yes, I am married to Mr. Barack Obama, but I am also the Michelle Obama who has these accomplishments of bridging gaps in community outreach in the South Side of Chicago. And I've done that outside of Barack Obama's name. I did it as Michelle Robinson before we got married, and I'm doing it as Michelle Obama even now that we are married. So I think it was that space of her still trying to find her steadiness within the whirlwind that is now becoming the machine behind U.S. Senator Barack Obama. And them trying to find their steadiness with this new title of U.S. Senator. Hurricane Katrina happens in August of 2005. And before now, people have been asking him whether he should run for the presidency. And he's been saying, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm really going to be in a space with my family. And that is a decision that family has to make. But then he went down to the outskirts of Louisiana. And he was having conversations with a lot of the people who were affected by Katrina. And in that moment, your former First Lady actually highlights how he talks about he didn't feel as if he was doing enough, even being a member of the Senate. So of course, in walks this U.S. presidential candidacy deliberation in her face. And she knows that he's thinking about doing it. She actually talks about it in the book. She knows he's thinking about doing it because he's having these conversations off to the side with everybody else, but he's not having a conversation with her because he knows how she feels about politics. He knows how she feels, or at least the conversation that she's going to give behind it. And so she talks about how they start having multiple conversations around. Her brother even calls her and says, if he's given the shot, he got to take it. You know, like, Black man could be president. You can't just sit here and say he can't do that. Like, he got to take the shot. When is the next time you gonna have somebody who's as ambitious talking about I'm gonna be Black and president, huh? So, you know, kudos to her brother Craig, because he was coming through with the conversations. So, but in this space of these deliberations, we do realize that President Barack Obama former President Barack Obama wants to run. She don't want him to run because she would much rather have him to herself and to her girls. But she's also not wanting to stand in the way of his dreams. So in that particular predicament, I understand that that's not how you say it. But in that space of thinking things through, it's a hard decision to make. And so she's thinking about her family, and she's thinking about her daughters, and she's thinking about the time that has been given when he first started wanting to go in the state legislature, when he first wanted to run for U.S. Congress. Now he's in the Senate. And again, it's not just going back and forth from Springfield to Chicago. It's now he's going from DC on a plane back to Chicago. And sometimes it's a week, maybe it's not. And they're on a plane going to and fro and things of that nature. And so now she's thinking about, and she's also thinking about what she's going to have to give up on the presidential campaign. The fact that she's going to have to be more present. She doesn't get to keep her privacy as she had when he was the rock star political man, and she was still able to do the things without it necessarily being her in the forefront. And so now she's in this space where it's going to require her to go to the forefront and things of that nature. All of this time where after that speech, he's been notified, he's been notarized, they republished his book, he got more royalty money, he's on the New York Times bestseller, in their house having a conversation and doing a review with them and an interview with them. And essentially things are happening, but she still has the capability of keeping her privacy. And that is also something that is being, discussed about, like this is no longer. But what we find out, as we know from history, obviously she said yes, but I think we didn't necessarily know the weightiness of her saying yes. And she talked about why she said yes. She talked about the fact that she had faith in her husband, the fact that she knew that he was a good man, the fact that she knew he was smart enough for the job, the fact that she knew he was good enough for the job, the fact that she knew that he would really move space for the American people, and not just, a certain group of American people, but for all Americans. And essentially, she also felt like she didn't know if America was ready for the likes of him because of the individual of who he was. And she also didn't know if America was ready for a Black president. So she said yes, but again, reluctantly, she said yes because she didn't know if they were ready. Again, I will just say, being in this space, what is it? Midterm elections are coming around the corner. Go get registered to vote, and do your due diligence as you are, as we are approaching this time. I would say go get registered to vote, to do the things to make sure that your vote matters and it counts, especially if you are of this hue and you like to complain about what the presidents are and are not doing. Don't think that you should. I don't think that you, and I am of this thought process, I don't think that you should be willing to give a complaint when you weren't willing to stand in the line and vote, especially if you have the capability to do so. So there is that. Anywho, didn't mean to turn this political, but I will just say we have gotten through chapter 15, which means that next week will be chapters 16, 17, and 18. We are trekking through this book. Essentially, I just thought that I think that her level of vulnerability, her willingness to share with her the feelings that she's having around all of these different things, the feelings that she had around not being able to conceive, the feelings that we have around her wanting to be extra protective of her children, and the feelings that she had around what they did in a previous space and time in their relationship and how it is no longer working, and understanding that it's okay to ask for help. I loved how she just really gave us the transparency, and even the transparency around not being sure that she really wanted her husband to run for presidency, but also understanding the importance of, as a loving partner, not standing in the way of your partner's dreams. Okay, friends, like I said, chapters 16, 17, and 18 are what we are going over next week. So until then, I'll see you in the next video, saints and ain'ts. Bye.